Welcome to another Kundalini After Dark session. I'm your host, Brent Spirits. I'm here on Zoom. We've got 22 people in the Zoom call. If you're tuning in on YouTube, thank you all so much for joining me live. Today, we're talking all about Kundalini and pain. It's a bit of a heavy topic today, but a very important one, right? We may have this idea that Kundalini awakening is all about bliss and magic and love, and of course, can be all of those things at times. But for many of us, sometimes for long periods of time, we experience pain, right? On many levels, emotional, of course, but also physical. Sometimes people experience physical pain as well. So today we'll talk about this together. But please know that we're not here to discuss any medical advice. We're coming together as lay people over the internet just to have a conversation for education, for entertainment purposes. So no medical advice here, okay? If you're listening to the recording in the archive, you can join us for the next Kundalini After Dark session. You can visit brentspirit.com/afterdark to register. We'd love to have you. I'm going to talk today a little bit, and then I'm going to open the floor up for others to share about Kundalini and pain on their journey, as well as anything else to do with the spiritual awakening path in general. Special thank you to all those that have left a rating on Spotify. I really appreciate that. For those that have followed, subscribed, comment as well, it goes a very long way. Thank you so much. And a very, very special thank you to all those that have offered a donation. It goes a long way. It allows me to do this work. So thank you so much. So let's get into this here on the topic of Kundalini and pain. So today I really had no idea what we were going to talk about. And so I just pulled out a bunch of books off my bookshelf, just a bunch of them all about Kundalini. I've got just a bunch and just started flipping through them and wasn't really coming up with anything that was really calling me until I came to this book here by Yuji Krishnamurti called The Mystique of Enlightenment. Now, Yuji Krishnamurti is a very interesting guy, controversial, bit of an asshole, but quite refreshing compared to some of the other spiritual material insights, dare I say, teachings out there. I don't know if he would refer to himself as a teacher or a guru. He was more so of an anti-teacher, anti-guru type of guy, but very fresh perspective. And he speaks about Kundalini awakening in his own words, and perhaps he wouldn't even call it Kundalini, so maybe I'm putting words in his mouth. But when he describes his experience, as I'm about to read, it sounds like Kundalini to me. So I was just flipping through and I came across him describing some of his awakening process. So he describes what he refers to as an event that took place after he was practicing some meditation, some inquiry very seriously. And he describes it as the calamity. So the calamity took place, and he describes this sort of explosion taking place. And over the next period of time, he went through all sorts of different changes on many different levels. And so I'll read an excerpt here where he describes, then on the 8th day, I was sitting on the sofa and suddenly there was an outburst of tremendous energy shaking the whole body. And along with the body, the sofa, the chalet, and the whole universe, as it were, shaking, vibrating. You can't create that movement at all. It was sudden. Whether it was coming from outside or inside, from below or above, I don't know. I couldn't locate the spot. It was all over. It lasted for hours and hours. I couldn't bear it, but there was nothing I could do to stop it. There was a total helplessness. This went on and on, day after day, day after day. Whenever I sat, it started. This vibration, like an epileptic fit or something. It went on for days and days. For 3 days, Yuji lay on his bed, his body contorted with pain. It was, he says, as if he felt pain in every cell of his body, one after the other. Similar outbursts of energy occurred intermittently throughout the next 6 months whenever he lay down or relaxed. The body feels pain. It's a very painful process, very painful. It is a physical pain because the body has limitations. It has a form, a shape of its own. So when there is an outburst of energy, which is not your energy or my energy or God's, or call it by any name you like, it is like a river in spate. The energy that is operating there does not feel the limitations of the body. It is not interested. It has its own momentum. It is a very painful thing. It is not that ecstatic, blissful beatitude and all that rubbish. Nonsense. It is a really painful thing. Oh, I suffered for months and months after that. Before that, too, everybody has. Even Ramana Maharshi suffered after that. A great cascade. Not one, but thousands of cascades. It went on and on for months and months. It's a very painful experience. Painful in the sense that the energy has a peculiar operation of its own. There is an atom, lines going out like that. This is taken from a live talk, and so he was demonstrating with his hands the direction of the lines. It is a clockwise, counterclockwise, and then it is this way, then it is this way, and then it is this way. Like an atom, it moves inside, not in one part of your body, the whole body. It is as if a wet towel were being wrung to get rid of the water. It is like that, the whole of our body. It's such a painful thing. It goes on even now. You can't invite it. You can't ask it to come. You can't do anything. It gives you the feeling that it is enveloping you, that it is descending on you. Descending from where? Where is it coming from? How is it coming? Every time it is new, very strange. Every time it comes in a different way, so you don't know what is happening. You lie down on your bed, and suddenly it begins. It begins to move slowly like ants. I think there were bugs in my bed. Jump out. Look, no bugs. Then I'd go back. Then again. The hairs are electrified, so it slowly moves. There were pains all over the body. And he goes on to describe his experience. So that was just a brief excerpt from U.G. Krishnamurti's The Mystique of Enlightenment. Found that at the thrift store, $4.99. So that inspired me to talk about pain today, because I know U.G. Krishnamurti's experience is not unusual. Many of us may have experienced similar pain associated with our awakening process. Now, he describes it lasting for months. I think he said 6 months. For others, it maybe is less. For others, maybe more. I haven't had the misfortune of such an extended period of pain, though I've had some significant experiences throughout my journey. I was working at a diner when I was, I think in my early 20s. Yeah, early 20s. And I was washing dishes, this diner, and I was about to quit and move on. And they brought on a new guy, and I was training him. And this new guy just happened through synchronicity, happened to reveal to me that he was, dedicated to the spiritual path like I was. So him and I were wash dishes together and, have some pretty profound conversations. We both recognized that, something had brought us together to have this connection, this rendezvous. And anyway, around this time, I had some pretty traumatic experience happen to me the day before work. And so I showed up to work after having spent all night up. I'm all very, very tired. And I say, look, man, this really traumatic thing took place. And this friend, Giorgio, he just looks at me and he just says, pain is the teacher. And it really just cut through, this message that he had for me. And he was a young guy my age, both of us, you could say at the lowest rung on the corporate ladder, washing dishes, mopping, that kind of stuff. But here we are, exchanging some pretty profound spiritual insights and support with one another. Bit of an aside, I remember speaking to him about synchronicity, and I was saying, look, man, this is totally synchronistic that we've come together. I'm about to leave, and you just happen to show up, and I'm training you to replace me, and we're having these, this pretty profound spiritual connection. And he was sort of unfamiliar with synchronicity and the flow, in a sense. So I was talking to him about this. He was talking to me about some things that I was unfamiliar with. So we were really exchanging a lot of data with each other. And so I said, we've talked about synchronicity now. I guarantee that some interesting things are going to begin happening to you. Just be open and see. So a couple weeks later or something, not even a couple weeks, it was very soon after, I went on a walk by my house, and I came to this sort of ravine area, and there was this really prominent hill where you could kind of have a bit of a vantage point of the whole landscape. And I look up there and I see Giorgio, and he's meditating there. So he's got his eyes closed. So I quietly went up and I just sat next to him, and we both started meditating together. And then he opened his eyes and he's just like, what the heck? Like, where did you come from? And I told him, I said, look, I told you some weird synchronicity is going to start happening to you. And so we had a good little connection there. He was also, like myself, he had mentioned that he was also having some encounters with some interdimensional beings, if you will, aliens and whatnot. And so I felt in good company with him. Anyway, so that was his teaching for me, telling me pain is the teacher. And that really, really rang true for me. So recently when I was on retreat, maybe not so recent, but anyway, beginning of this year, I went on a 10-day Vipassana retreat. And I was sitting, and I began to experience pain, which is quite common. If you go on a retreat, you begin to experience some pain. Sometimes the pain arises because your body isn't used to sitting. Other times, even if you're used to sitting, you go on a retreat, you begin meditating very deeply, pain starts to surface. It can be stuff coming to be clear, to release, but it's also a fantastic teacher if you allow it to be. So I was sitting on this retreat, and I have this really sharp, concentrated, fiery hot pain in my ass cheek. And it is as if somebody shot me like point blank with a sniper rifle. No matter what I would do, I couldn't find any relief. And so I kept sitting with it, and the pain was so intense that I began practicing everything that I could to try and escape the pain. So with Vipassana practice, with our concentration, you're able to scan various sensations on the body without judgment. This is the practice. And so I began to scan this pain back and forth. It was about, like this big, maybe, 8 inches, scanning it back and forth without judgment, trying to catch any part of me that was clinging, fighting, resisting that pain, wanting it to go away, and just being with it fully, just recognizing it as a sensation, neither good nor bad, just a sensation in the body, knowing that eventually it will cease, as everything does, because everything is impermanent. So I began to scan it back and forth, and this was bringing some relief. But the moment I stopped scanning, if I lost concentration, the pain would, the suffering from that pain would arise once again, 10 out of 10. So scanning sort of worked, but the moment I stopped, it would come right back. Then I remembered a practice from Daniel Ingram. He's a profound meditation guide. And he describes a practice of imagining swords falling, many swords falling, and they're just slicing you up. And it's a way of sort of dissecting and cutting through this body with a sense of visualization, with a sense of sensation, with your awareness. It's a very interesting practice, very powerful. Mind you, at this point, the pain is so intense that I've gone completely off track with what I was supposed to be doing formally as instructed on the retreat. So now I've gone rogue trying to manage this pain. So I'm engaging in this falling swords practice, and I'm dissecting the pain now, dissecting it in half, then dissecting those halves into quarters, and on and on and on. And I kept dissecting it all the way down to the atomic level. This is what I perceived it to be. I had dissected it down to the atomic level. And then from there, I dissected even the atom to subatomic level, and deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually I came to emptiness, total emptiness. It was very profound doorway into emptiness in this way. So the pain was a doorway into it. So that revealed emptiness. It revealed to me the arising and the passing away of what the Buddhists may refer to as kalapas, of these subatomic particles that are constantly in flux, constantly dancing, constantly moving, the energetic rising and falling of all of existence, also known as Shakti, which is the same thing as the flow of impermanence. It is the same as Shakti, as Kundalini Shakti, all one and the same, all one and the same, constantly dancing. So pain brought me into this very profound realization. And then from there, everything began to open up as total emptiness. I could see everything as arising and passing away. My mind, my body, the system, the world. I was looking at a tree and I felt I could put my hand through the tree. It was a very profound experience. So these things come and go in meditation, on retreats, nothing to become attached to, cool, exciting, but also not the ultimate aim of the practice. So nothing to be too, you can't cling to this, especially if it's something like impermanence. How are you going to cling to a realization like that? It's the realization implies that you shouldn't cling anyway, right? So anyway, so that was one thing that I realized there. Another way that I was working to escape the pain, because it would keep coming back, I was practicing exploding my consciousness up my spine and out the top of my head, out the top of my crown. And I would go into a sort of dissociated state, very profound sort of out of body experience where my body, I perceived myself to be about 30 feet above my body. And so everything became very small, very, very small and manageable. And I described that now, that 8-inch pain became the size of just like a little cinnamon heart, still kind of spicy, but very small and manageable. So I said, okay, this is something I can explore with this pain. But then the moment I returned back into my body, that cinnamon heart expanded out again to be this, this like gunshot wound. So eventually I got so frustrated. I knew that I was in a state of resistance. I was not doing something right. I was squirming. I was struggling. I was trying to escape this pain, to find a solution to this pain. I had tried everything. And so finally I said, you know what? I didn't try talking to this pain. Let me talk to it. So I gave up any practice trying to get rid of it or to manage it or to escape it or to dissect it. I let it just come full force. And it got even more intense. And I said, what's your story? What's your deal? What do you have to tell me? And it began to speak. It began to respond. And the pain said, internally, I heard a voice. It was the voice of this pain. It said, everyone has a pain in the ass. Everyone. For some, it's in their mind. It's in their heart. It's in their body. But everyone is dealing with some sort of pain, just like this. And I am here to remind you of that. And I will be with you as often as it takes, or as long as it takes, and as often as needed to remind you that everyone has some pain and to have compassion for all. Compassion for all. So like that, I said, okay, I understand. I understand why you're here. I understand. Others are suffering in their own way, just like I am. And so this is my reminder. And so I made peace with it. I stopped fighting it. I was thankful that it was there. Eventually, over time, it began to dissipate, began to dissolve. And every now and then it comes back. And it reminds me that others are also having some sort of pain too. Because whenever everything is going well, I'm peaceful, I'm in good health, it's very easy for me to forget that others are suffering. It's very easy for me to forget what it's like to be in pain. right? And when we forget, or I should say, when I forget, then it's easy to forget how to have empathy or to have compassion. So pain was a teacher for me in this way as well. So maybe others have some experience with pain on their journey. This has been a little bit about my experience. Unfortunately, I don't have many tips or insights for how to relieve the pain. If I did, I've shared what I can. And like I said, it didn't really work for me. I had to make peace with it and see the pain as a teacher and to take the lessons. But maybe others have some tips, some ways that they've managed pain. I know that there are valid ways, right? Meditation practice is good. Mindfulness practice is good, right? We can have pain without suffering, right? If we have pain and then we resist it, then it turns into suffering. But we can also just have pain, and we all will have pain. It's only natural for the human body to experience pain at some point or another, right? But it's the resistance to it, the internal clinging, the flinching, the fighting that creates um, another layer of pain on top of it, which is unnecessary, right? So I'll pause there. Curious about others and their experience with pain. Maybe you've got some things to share. Maybe you want to vent. Maybe you want to relate. Maybe you want to normalize pain, right? In this Kundalini topic, sometimes people think that it's all about bliss, and they feel like when they don't have bliss, something is going wrong. Or if the bliss goes away, they think maybe they've messed up. But no, no, pain is quite common. Like I read from Yuji's account, right? Pain is common. Doesn't doesn't have to always be there. I hope that if you are experiencing pain, relief does come when the time is right. So we'll hear what others have to share. If you want to go off topic today, talk about something other than pains, you're more than welcome to as well. Anything goes here. But first, just know that this is a live meeting. And so we meet here after dark. I've called this after dark because we meet to discuss the taboo, right? In the darkness, where we are concealed, you could say, right? We can't talk about some of this stuff at lunch in the broad daylight with our normie friends and family. So we meet together to discuss things that are sometimes a little uncomfortable, a little heavy, okay? So I'm not here to censor anybody. But if you are going to share something that you feel may be graphic, maybe a little intense for others, maybe it's got to do with violence or abuse or sexual themes, you're welcome to. But please, I ask if you just give us a bit of a heads up, a bit of a trigger warning, if you will, so others can, use their discernment, mute the call, take a break, come back later when they're uh, ready to rejoin. Okay, just so that everyone is comfortable and that everyone has a positive experience. So we'll go over to those that want to share. You can share in the call in audio or video. You can type in the chat as well. I'll do my best to read what's going on in the chat. You can also visit some of the links in the description if you're listening in the recording and you would like to join the next After Dark meeting. The link is there. We've got some courses as well. Check it all out. Lots and lots of stuff there for you. So let's go over here to Kat.
Hi, Brent.
Hey, Kat.
Hey guys. So I have a share for y'all that was helpful for me navigating physical pain during my process. I personally have struggled with chronic pain for a number of years now, so I'm no stranger to it, but at certain parts of my process it has been worse and less manageable than at other points. So I had an experience, I would call it like 3 or 4 months ago now, and it was extremely debilitating. Like I was like on the ground, writhing in floor, um, writhing in pain on the floor, crying. Like it was very ugly, not fun. Um, and I had something happened. I like kind of left the room to take a break, and I've had experiences of like receiving downloads and like channeling in the past. They usually come in the form of like when I'm meditating, sometimes when I'm journaling, I'll do it. And on this particular night, I actually channeled out loud to myself. So, kind of in between sobs, I said, it's like shadow work for your body. And I said, that's stupid. And then I said, but it's true. And again, very different tones of voices. One was hysterical, one was calm and knowing. Um, and up until this point in my process, I was very familiar with like kind of like the emotional purge of being sad, being angry, everything else in between. And this was my first time kind of really dealing with outside of like actual trauma releases, just like a general pain flare up. And that kind of really helped me to understand it and have a better relationship with it, especially because with sort of the more traditional shadow work of the emotional self, um, that framework really helped me to sit with the pain and allow it and understand it and see it as another phrase that helps me is productive pain, and like you've said in the past, kind of like, and this has also been helpful to me of like your Kundalini process is like surgery. Like, yeah, the surgery is not going to be pleasant, but when it's done, it'll be nice. So, productive pain is just, I comfort myself with that fact and knowing that it is for the greater good, even if it is pretty crappy in the moment. So it was very cool because I have never channeled aloud. And again, this was just like too wise and it was not something I wanted to hear because I was frustrated with that. I'm like, I want, it's easy to do the victim thing, right? Or you're like, I'm in pain, this hurts, I want to fix it. So yeah, it was just a cool experience of channeling and also being able to kind of like expand my understanding and do better to allow and accept and surrender the more uncomfortable, irritating part of that process on a physical level.
Wow. Very profound. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I like that. It's shadow work for your body. Shadow work for your body. And we can hear this and still resist, right? We can hear pain as the teacher and still say, I don't want those teachings. And that's okay. Very profound, Kat. And so after that experience that night, for example, was there a significant shift in your attitude, or did you continue to kind of resist what came through?
I was still, I don't think my pain level shifted, but I think that mental shift helped a lot. Like, I think I was still in the same amount of pain, but because I was not resisting it and because I was allowing it, I think I probably worked through it more quickly. And I also think it helped me long term, big picture down the line in terms of like when that stuff happens, it's again for the greater good, it's a productive pain. And I also think you've mentioned in the past, and maybe it wasn't you, maybe I've like heard or read this somewhere else, that kind of like with, like when an animal has like a traumatic event, like a dog, for instance, like they kind of like do that big shake after something spooks them. And like humans don't do that, like you just keep on keeping on. You put one foot in front of the other. And as we know, this process, it's purging everything that's not serving you and that's holding you back. So, some of us have had a more turbulent, traumatic path than others. So for a lot of us, it's going to look like more pain and more discomfort. Yeah, right. So, and I'm part of that demographic where I got a little more stuff to work through than others might, and less so than others. Um, so again, just like kind of that just perspective and having that lens helped to kind of, it's almost like when you see on National Geographic, like an antelope gets taken down by a lion. Like it's to that point where it's like, all right, you just gotta let go, resist. And that trigger warning. That's a graphic image, but that's kind of what it's like, just surrendering it and allowing it. And once you're not fighting it, it's going to hurt less and it's going to be quicker, I guess, also,
Yeah.
So, I mean, we talk a lot about surrender here. And obviously, the stronger the ego, the more resistance, and it's hard to let that go and trust, the energy in your process to do what it needs to do. Um, so it's a learning curve like anything else, but yeah, I was eager to share that with y'all and anyone that listens to this down the line because it just really helped shift my perspective on the pain sucks, no one wants it, but we also in our society, most societies, it's like this fix, what can we do, I want to feel better. And a lot of the time, like you said, pain's a teacher. What are you learning from it? What is it trying to tell you? A lot of the time your symptoms are signs and you need to listen to them and understand them instead of trying to fight and fix.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah. Life of the Jackal here says that was so perfectly stated. You nailed it. Thanks, Kat. Let's hear from Samia.
Good evening, family. I hope all is well.
Hey, Samia.
I um I got on the call late, so but we're talking about physical pain and um I've been through a lot of it, and it's humbling in a different way because since this awakening, the only thing that the majority of it was the movement helped a tremendous amount of deal. Working out, yoga, just movement, and among many of my moves, I'm on my third move, but I'm kind of stationary for right now in Virginia. Started in Florida, but I had an injury a couple months ago, and I just couldn't do yoga. I couldn't bend. I couldn't walk upstairs, and it just crushed me. And I went through a whole purge about that, not being able to move. like and it just I guess with pain like that and not be able to move and not be able to express or get it out that way, I was taught, for me, the lesson was I was taught to, I just have to do things differently. Instead of crossing my legs and sitting in meditation, I couldn't do it anymore for a long time. I had standing meditations. I mean, I just had to use different processes and use different things. And it was very painful because like getting up, walking, trying to work, or anything else, both my knees were just kaput, like my hips, everything else. And I can't sleep at night. And it's gotten better, but I had to learn to pivot and just do other things. The things I love, I just had to let go and be at peace with it and be like, one day I'll be able to do that again. It gave me comfort, it gave me peace, it kept me centered. My whole world can't crash anymore because I can't do a particular exercise. Like, come on. But it was my world. It might sound petty to other people. I'm not saying it is, but it really messed me up for a while because for 2 years that's all I could do was work out. Workout kept me straight. Workout, spinning, running, anything, any type of movement, dance. It just ate at me so much. So when you can't do it, and that's taken away for whatever reason, and the message I got was you need to sit still. You need to sit still because it got to a point where I was doing sometimes so much movement, sometimes yin yoga, a couple hours a day, that it was just, I think I was using it a lot more as a crutch or escapism in a way.
Mm.
And I just really injured my body even more because I didn't want to deal with what I was dealing with, with this awakening and circumstances. And I just put it on the mat and I just injured myself more. So the lesson I got from it was I just need to sit still and I need to be patient and I need to take it slow. And I did. And I started with stretches and I started with other things. And now I can do 10-minute yoga and do some movement, but I had to learn that I had to pivot. It was so hard and I was so hard on myself. And I was just like, what else are you going to take? What else are you going to take from me? But it taught me to just sit. And it's very hard to sometimes just sit and trust. And, in time, it did get better. Like, people try to put labels on it. I even go to doctors. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to take it easy, and I navigate it, and it's getting better and it feels good. But it scared the heck out of me because I guess I depended on it. And maybe that was a lesson too. I can't just depend on one thing to ignore or try to bypass everything else that's going on. I'll just work out all the time. That doesn't work. So I learned a really good lesson. It was a harsh lesson for me, but I learned that I just sometimes need to sit and just stay still. So, I mean, that's what I learned from it. Thanks for
Yeah.
letting me share.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Yeah. All the different factors in our life can be changed. We can become old. We can get injured. Everything can change. But one thing that we will always have access to is internal stillness, acceptance, surrender, patience, like you shared. Those things don't have to ever be taken away from us. Yeah. We have to grieve sometimes too when we lose access to things that we once were able to get benefit from. We have to grieve not being able to exercise or to do the things that we used to be able to do. And that's its own emotional process as well. Thank you, Samia. But what's interesting, at least in my experience, and I imagine for others as well, is, we have to all come to these conclusions on our own. Like all these insights that we've shared, I feel like we have to go through the journey and come to the point where those insights land and then it makes sense. You can't just hear it on day one and skip the whole journey. Doesn't seem to work like that. So maybe in some respects, we're we're just talking for no reason here. So everyone has to go through their journey and gather these insights themselves too. But I'm sure it's meaningful for some nonetheless. Angel says here in the chat, I've met a few people who have this impression that their Kundalini is all about superpowers, and they have no understanding of the inner work that takes place to release what is not in your highest, best, and greater good. Yeah. A lot of inner work, shadow work for the body and the mind. Yeah. Tracy shares here the physical pain I remember first having initially during my awakening experience was in my lower back. It was chronic. I thought it was arthritis. Months later, I had pain in my finger joints, especially my thumbs. I couldn't do the usual hand work I was accustomed to. I read a book that talked about physical pains that could be past life trauma surfacing, such as having had one's thumbs cut off. I believe this is what I was experiencing. Gradually, my pains went away over time, so it could not have been due to arthritis. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I think we were discussing this in a previous call as well, about some pains showing up relating to some past life karma being cleared and whatnot. It's another way to look at it. And nonetheless, this life, previous lifetime, whatever it is, resisting it doesn't help, right? Let's hear from Mark.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Mark.
I was just wanting to expand on this. I wasn't able to walk at one point, and at first, like the solutions were more immediate, like medication, or doctors would recommend various different things. And then that started to drop off, and I did more physical work or somatic work, and all this inspiration from, YouTube has helped me tremendously working with the vagus nerve, um, and just so many different things. But the most important thing has been the belief that you're healing, the belief that there is healing in place, and just like the realization that you're looking into these things, it means that you do believe in it. It's there. So I find a lot of inspiration from that because if you're seeking and you're looking for this wisdom or this healing, you know in your heart that it's there's a truth there and that it is possible. And for myself, that just became more and more true. Um, and I'm wanting to expand on it more, to share that with people because a lot of it has had to do with perception, where perception is placed, and even like the idea of seeking truth and that being kind of outwardly placed versus inwardly placed, that has made a difference in my perception and my physical responses. And this has turned more into like a creation of my reality or a creation of my inner self, so that can like manifest as like visualization really helps a lot. But again, like this started with me not really being able to walk and then, you know, incorporating like something that I wouldn't use now, but then over time it got more to that place. Um, and yeah, just again the belief in the healing and the recognition of shadow work. I really like that physical shadow work context because I feel like some people get kind of confused. There's all that I did initially. I saw all these affirmations and all this positivity, and it's like it brings a part of the self to a certain level. And then the other part of the self is like, hey, what about me? Like, I'm still in your unconscious mind. Like, what happened to me? And it kind of needs to be brought up. And I get a little frustrated just seeing some of the context about externally identifying that as something that's beyond the self. So having a context of the shadow work for it is really empowering. There's a responsibility but empowerment in that is liberating. And it has a lot to do with, again, the perception and the where you find your truth, right? Your discernment and where you place that point of focus if you have that truth within. And yeah, again, just the belief in healing, it is true for you, right? So you just have to choose that. It's up to you.
Amazing, Mark. Thank you. Yes. Knowing that we're healing, right? This isn't something going wrong per se. It's part of the process to heal. It can be painful. Carissa is asking here in the chat for you, Mark. Do you think not being able to walk was part of your Kundalini awakening?
Yeah, well, I mean, at a certain point, it's kind of like everything was, you know. I shared initially when I first came into this chat that I had a Kundalini awakening at the beginning of Pluto in Capricorn. It was when that was first transitioning. This was around like 2007, 2008. And I had Kundalini psychosis. I was put on meds and I was told, you should not be having this experience. So a lot was kept inward. And there was also an experience like caretaking for family where I feel that I absorbed something from a family member that was passing, but then at the same time, I mean, it was in my DNA anyway. So it was in like that part of my soul group. Maybe that's another way to put that. And so I ended up processing that. Um, does that answer the question? I'm not totally sure,
Y-
but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's a pretty intense journey, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm happy you're here to share your wisdom that you gathered.
This is helping me talk about it because I'm not always used to the rhetoric, the expression, the sharing. There's that medical aspect, and I don't want anyone to feel like you need to do this or that. If there's any like technique, that works for you and your belief is toward that technique, then that's best. That's best for you because your belief is there. Um, but I did want to add that there was this core wounding related to fixing things because someone brought that up too. And this had to do with a family member. That's my first memory as a family member being in so much pain on the floor because the other family member had passed. And as a small child, I just wanted to fix that. And so now, Pluto is going into another sign. It's like this has been this whole part of this journey, and I'm transmuting this into a gratitude from all this now that I'm here. But I mean, again, it was a long process, and I'm hoping that I can help people with it moving forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. I think what you shared is definitely helpful. Let's hear from David.
Yeah, thank you, Brent, for putting on the platform again. And my love goes to everyone else here, and I wish you all the best with your journey. I really resonated with the last comment in having belief or a knowing, if you like, which is liberating. And I just had a download in a lucid dream a couple of nights ago, which is valid, which I'll certainly share if you allow me, Brett. But
Absolutely.
what comes to mind ultimately is a YouTube clip that I saw not long ago from Yogananda, and that God fulfills all desires. So what I've found in my journey, which has been a number of years now, and I'm still suffering with chronic head pressure pain, if I sit still, this isn't me doing this, it's this Kundalini energy, and I can get a pendulum out of it, forward and back for yes and no's the other way. But ultimately, I've given away through a lot of suffering, through institutions involved with churches, and a long story, but I've surrendered to what they call the grand order of design or God. And that to me has been giving me answers in lucid dreams, which has been wonderful. The liberation is really wonderful because it's led me into what's been presented here. If I can show you a little sketch which I drew, and I'm no artist, and it doesn't come anywhere near what was presented. It's not even a thousandths close, but I'll see if you can see it. I'll flick on a light maybe. So that's the distant sketch of it all. And it started off in beautiful reality. So this is a path, the path, I assume, of mine and many others in Kundalini. And it was in vivid our reality colors with a forest. And it had overhead growth and tree roots and beautiful flowers and so on around it initially. And as the path continued, probably halfway along, it turned dark. Now, I've been through the black night of the soul and stabbed and shot and held down and held out of schools and all sorts of things. And the path was black, the roots were black, just like going through the aftermath of a fire. And it continued for quite a while. And the square section on the bottom, there was a door which was open. Now, I think we're all susceptible to that, and I certainly was. I came very, very close to leaving, but I didn't. So I was saved, I believe, by, you call it spirit, or, we're not alone, we know that, and continued along the dark night of the soul and all these attacks and so on. Ultimately, I came through and left fear and came through to totally trusting this source or this divine essence, this brilliant white light, which we refer to as God. And in the dream, following that, it doesn't really show properly, out of the darkness, I'm looking ahead probably 150 feet in your terminology, 200 maybe. There was a glow from the sky, which started as a soft white, just like turning up a dimmer and a light switch in a room, but it came from above and it turned into a beautiful soft rose quartz. And as I looked into the distance, so I can get close to the lens here, can you see that?
Yeah.
In the distance, there was a beautiful blue, angelic colors we're talking about now, out of this realm, sky with gorgeous puffy white clouds. The yellow is white. And there standing is the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Now I looked it up down here somewhere. Freedom. Turn it up backwards. I can't read it. Sorry. Inspiration and hope. Liberty enlightening the world. So to me, this Kundalini energy is all about service, and that's what I ultimately believe it is. Then the journey of Kundalini ultimately leads us back to freedom and liberty to help others.
Wow.
So that's been my journey, and I just thought it was worthwhile sharing.
Absolutely
What we can pick
worthwhile.
up with the rational mind from our mind is minute, it's tiny. I just spent the weekend with Dr. Nelson Bradley, who's the emotion code, and he said, and I do believe it, that the galaxies and the planets are equivalent or more to every grain of sand on Mother Earth. So to think of the energy and the wisdom that's wrapped up in all of that, and we're just trying to dissect it in our rational mind. Well, if you surrender to the divine, or what I call the brilliant white light, Hindus call it Shakti, Christianity talks of the Holy Spirit. Well, if you just surrender to that, then what I've found that ultimately this journey turns into a beautiful, bright one, and it's perfect for man's service. I think the world at the moment needs it. Ultimately, they're talking about in the next 5 years. Greg Braden just finished a book, which he took 7 months off to write, saying that really we've got 5 years, and there's going to be some form of separation in consciousness. He's not the only one talking about that as well. So I just thought I'd share that for what it's worth. And nobody's alone, and this web of consciousness is available to all of us. And there's nothing wrong with the journey. When you get to the darkness of it, it certainly blends into a beautiful aftermath of divine essence, which is what we are. So thank you, Brett, for the platform.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing and for speaking so beautifully about the journey. Is it a biblical idea of walking through the valley of the shadow of death? That's what came to me when I was looking at that dark section of your pathway.
Sorry, Brett. I may just finish very quickly. It may be helpful, which certainly was for me. So I realized the quality of my questions determine the quality of the answers. And I said, well, if awareness supports all it is, which I realize now it does, nothing exists without consciousness or awareness. What supports awareness? This was A3 size. Let's see if I can bring it up. The top was rose quartz. The center was a soft white. On the bottom was a very pastel green. So it was God the Father. Supports all it is. So that's where I go. And it seems to work.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's hear from Carissa, and then I'll go and check out what's going on in the chat. And to those tuning in on YouTube, welcome. Vijay, Soprotivlenia, welcome, welcome. Traveling Little Fish, welcome. If you'd like to join us in the Zoom call, the link is in the description. Let's hear from Carissa.
Oh man, I'm so glad I hopped on tonight. I didn't see the topic, and then I was like, "Oh, it's on. I have time after dinner." And then it was about pain, which was like once I came on, I realized what you guys were talking about, which felt very timely. I just was going back to kind of what Mark was talking about, and then the fellow that just went. My journey's included a lot of pain. I was like injured through negligence at like the peak of my awakening in the beginning. And I've been dealing with that throughout my entire process. And then I went and found a treatment that was helping. It was laser therapy. So my throat has been injured, which has been impacting my vocal cords and my ability to speak for the past like year and a half. And so I had done a few treatments of laser therapy. And it can be challenging to work on the area because I was injured there. And so it's like, can be, it takes a lot of vulnerability for me to like receive work there. And I really trusted my practitioner, and he has this really high grade medical laser. On the third session, he's like been very, very adamant that it cannot be shined in your eyes. I was wearing protective goggles, um, or like glasses, and he like backed up to change the dials on the machine. And he shined it in my face while he was like changing the dials, like through like just negligence. Like I opened my eyes, I was wearing the goggles, and he was shining it in my face while he was doing this. And I like looked down and I could see like redness on my cheeks of the laser, like as he's shining it at me. And it's like a very high grade laser. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm wearing the glasses. I should be okay. And I'm not okay. This was on Wednesday. And ever since then, I've, hold on, please. I've had headaches and light sensitivity, like way more than I've had during, the rest of my awakening. Like, even though I've had that in the past, and like my eyes have been so in pain that I've had to like go to bed really early. Anyway, I just am like, I was finally found something that was working, that was like, I was so excited about. And I was only 3 sessions in, and now my eyes are maybe damaged. And so it just felt like the first day I had like this surrender about it, like, oh, of course, this is like, I felt really like almost like it was funny of like at this point in the journey, just to be so jaded about pain, and like to just get like when it gets so bizarre that you just laugh. But like at this point, it felt like I was injured again through negligence again. And so I guess just like listening to everyone talk of like, I had the belief like, oh, this is going to help. This is going to help me like recover. And and now I'm dealing with a whole new set of problems that haven't subsided, and that, it could be a really serious injury from the laser. So as far as like long term on like my ability to look at screens and my like it's and so anyway, I just like want to share of like I go back and forth between like surrender and consent, and like the trust of like the other side of the dark night of the soul. And then I also go back to just feeling like a victim of like I'm wearing the glasses. I'm like trusting that I'm trying to follow the process of like, am I silly for continuing to trust in this path? And so I guess I just want to share like how much we can really be tested along this. And, and I think I'll continue to come back to trust, but that other side is definitely there as well.
Yeah. Carissa, that sounds terrible. And I'm really sorry that this theme has been, recurrent on your journey in this way. I'm going to ask you to unmute because I have a question about, you said you find it a little funny. To me, that sounds like a significant shift or growth.
Yeah.
Would you say so?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like, okay, so Shakti wants me to be like mute and blind in one eye. Like, and then I'll be like in a cave with like the raven on my shoulder, and I'll come out like once a year, and I'll, and I'll give the omens. And, I definitely, I get that cosmic part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for bringing some humor to the theme today a little bit. Yeah, I felt similar where it's almost becomes like it's like it just you feel so powerless at times that all you can do is laugh. I felt like that before. And it's very different from feeling like a victim. It's almost like you're just, I don't even know. It's something. It's like something about laughter that is a sort of a surrender, a submissive type of relieving. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying, but I hope others can get what I'm getting at. And thank you for sharing, Carissa. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Let's hear from Medina.
Hey, so I just want to ask in regards to the psychological pain. I'm reading in the comment section and I'm hearing a lot of people talking about it all the time on this journey. However, for some strange reason, I feel like all my pain is physical. And obviously, I've also had like the psychological pain that comes from the physical, you know, not being able to leave my home and not being able to dance and do the things that I used to do before. Like all that hurts me a lot psychologically too. But I feel like it's like the theme is physical for me. So I want to ask you, is this because I'm kind of new on my journey and it will probably coming up this psychological pain more and more with time? I also had an experience like a few years before my Kundalini process started. I think actually it was a Kundalini experience. It was during an ayahuasca retreat where Mother Ayahuasca, or actually looking back now, I think that it was actually Shakti, it was Kundalini, but she took me on a journey through past lives. And I remember going back to before I was even on the planet, and just she told me that I was cleansing a lot and my physical body was suffering a lot. I was vomiting a lot and I was crying a lot, and shaman had to take me out of the room. And you know, it was a big deal for my physical body, but my spirits that was with ayahuasca or Kundalini at the time, I was completely fine. But she told me that I was going through a lot of cleansing from past lives, etc. So I'm not sure. Maybe I have already kind of done some work on that, and that's why I'm not experiencing it as much as I hear other people doing. Or what's your thoughts on this in general, Brent?
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing this theme up, Medina. I'll read Hugo's comment in the chat here as well. Hugo says, for me, it's been more about the psychological pain rather than the physical. This process is really digging up or stirring the silt of my conditioning. Things being brought to my attention, how I don't see them as they are, rather as I am, or through my conditioned filter, which then leads to being called out, which leads to observing myself, defending, etc. Man, it's been tough. Kundalini is helping me snap out / catapult me out of these stories I carry, but damn, it's painful as they are very sticky. Yeah, so Medina, I wouldn't say that everybody has to go through like these two distinct phases of a physical pain process and then a psychological pain process. I think there's many factors to consider. Firstly, recognizing that we all have different journeys to begin with. But I think some of us carry pain differently, right? Some of us are more cerebral, more intellectual, whereas others are more somatic, more sensitive in terms of their body. And I think maybe this contributes to the way that we go through our process as well. I think ultimately, if we remove the distinction between psychological pain and physical pain and just look at it as pain, the work is the same, right? Like everyone has shared today. We see it as a teacher. We see it as shadow work, productive, right? We see it as part of the process. And so if you can get to that place, whether it's through dealing with your physical pain, well, then maybe you don't need to go on a whole separate journey to get to the same realization with your psychological pain. And so maybe then it doesn't need to arise and vice versa. So some may be hearing like, oh no, I haven't had physical pain yet, right? Maybe you never will, and that's okay. Maybe you've come to the point of equanimity, of acceptance, of understanding. And so you don't need that lesson to be taught to you in such a visceral way. Maybe. This is what's coming to me to share. How does that speak to you, Medina?
It makes so much sense. As always, it makes so much sense. Also, my ears started ringing as you were talking, so
Yeah.
so there's definitely something to this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brent.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I know like some people will hear these, these really difficult themes of the journey, and they hear about the dark night of the soul and they say, I haven't had that yet. It's coming. How can I prepare? Or they're scared. They don't want to push it. And sometimes people don't really have a really challenging journey. Sometimes people have very gentle journeys. Just we don't hear from them, right? They don't report anything. They have nothing to say. That's why they don't write a book about it. They don't do a podcast about it. It's when things get challenging, those are the people that start talking. And then what happens is that relays a message that, this has to be challenging. It doesn't necessarily have to be. It doesn't have to be. What I've found for myself is that the pain been a teacher for me. And then it helps me as a teacher, as a guide, as somebody here to be of service, to then be able to relate and support others. So perhaps there's a person who's not meant to really be an obvious light worker connecting with people. So then maybe they don't need to be initiated into these ways because they don't have to go out and somehow support other people. Maybe they're meant to kind of be low key and do their work in a different type of way. But for me, I've recognized that every time I go through something on the highest level, I recognize that this is training for my job doing this. So you can also look at what is your life themes, mission, purpose, calling, vocation, your dharma, what is it? And that can also help you to orient and to contextualize some of the challenges that you may go through, right? So I hope that can help. It's a great theme, Hugo, Medina. So thank you for bringing that up. And I'm curious if anyone else has some other thoughts. Hugo responds here to Shane in the chat. Hugo shares, I'm simply invited to investigate and fully embrace the energy of wanting to defend. Speaking of his stories, to open and to listen when something has been brought to my attention. I guess I replace the stories with self-love, knowing that there is only one self at play through the other who is mirroring. Yeah, that's great. Naima asks here in the chat, can you talk a little bit about addiction in the journey? I've recently picked up an addiction by proximity and I'd like to stop. I've been able to cut alcohol and now caffeine, and I'd like to stop this last habit. It causes a personal struggle and physiological pain and shame. Any insight or tips? Anyone else dealing with new addictions or kicking old ones on the path? Yeah, well, thank you for opening up about this one, Naima, this theme here. I'll try and speak about it in a way that relates directly to this process, the spirituality, the spiritual awakening journey. And what I've come to understand about addiction is that it ultimately boils down to our relationship with our feelings, right? We feel something uncomfortable. There's a label. This is something I don't want. This feeling, this emotion, this urge, this craving, this longing. I don't want this. It's not good. How can I get it to go away ASAP? What's the easiest way? And then often there's some sort of vice, some sort of addiction there. And we take the vice, feeling goes away temporarily, and then it comes back stronger. And so what do? Now we've been conditioned to go towards that addiction. So being able to sit with those feelings, those urges, those whatever it may be, with acceptance, looking at it in the same way that we've been discussing today as a teacher, right? That emotion, even that emotion of boredom, that can be a very powerful driving force behind addiction. People don't want to be bored, so they turn towards some sort of vice. So sitting with the boredom and seeing it as a teacher, seeing it as productive pain, seeing it as part of the shadow work that we're doing, sitting with the boredom or the anxiety or the worry or the grief or the stress or the shame, whatever emotion it may be, sitting with it, right? Seeing it as something of value, not something that needs to be escaped. Easier said than done, of course. And of course, dealing with addiction is a journey, and you could see it as a spiritual journey, Right? This is why, all the AA material, for example, is utterly spiritual, right? Therapy can be very helpful for this sort of thing too, right? Just by seeking help, we acknowledge that we need support. We can't deal with this just easily on our own. So seeking therapy can also be very powerful to highlight some areas where you may not recognize that those feelings are coming up and motivating you towards the addiction. But of course, there are some addictions that we maybe shouldn't just stop cold turkey suddenly, right? It can cause some health issues and whatnot, to put it mildly. So of course, like I said, no medical advice here. This isn't therapy. We're just having a conversation. Addiction is very serious. But ultimately, it's like we're all addicted to something, right? Clinging. This is what the Buddha taught, right? Attachment, clinging, right? Or he taught the way out of it, right? So we're addicted to feeling good in subtle ways. So being able to sit with pain, sit with those emotions, noticing them, seeing them as teachers, seeing them all as part of the spectrum of the divine, this can help. But it is a challenging journey. The shame that comes with addiction is often really the catch-22, because sometimes we feel ashamed that we have this addiction. We feel ashamed that we can't overcome it. Now, if we look at Hawkins' scale, the emotional scale, at the very bottom of the scale is shame. Shame is the lowest vibrational frequency in terms of emotions. It's at the very bottom, right? So when we feel shame, it feels so bad that we want to get out of it. We want to escape it. We want to find some way to overcome it, even if it's temporary, right? So maybe we'll turn to a vice. And then what happens? Oh man, I had to go to the vice. Now I feel more ashamed that I did that. And then that leads to an ongoing downward spiral. It's very, very unfortunate. So if we can also at least recognize that addiction is not something to be ashamed about. It's an illness, it's a sickness. This can be very helpful as well. I love Gabor Mate's work when it comes to addiction. In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, I highly recommend that book. It is so profound, so beautiful. Gabor Mate for managing addictions. Let's hear from Tom.
Hi. Yeah, Gabor Mate's work is quite fascinating, and he's anyhow. Yeah, as I wrote in the chat, but I also want to say when when Kundalini first awoke in me, I was smoking a lot of weed. I used to grow it, so my own. So I had as much as I wanted anytime, and I was smoking like 5, 6 joints a day. You know, before I went to bed, I'd smoke a joint, which is really stupid. When I woke up, I'd smoke a joint, basically, and 2 packs of cigarettes. What I did was I knew that, or I'd read that marijuana isn't necessarily compatible with the spiritual path, and cigarettes certainly aren't, I guess. So I just made a decision to stop smoking, and I set my birthday as, which was like 2 weeks ahead. But I've insisted that I smoke a lot more than I had been smoking in those 2 weeks leading up to quitting. And I really wanted to quit like that day to try, but I forced myself to smoke and smoke and smoke and it was really quite a relief on when the day finally came that I didn't have to. And I think because of Kundalini, because I prayed that I wouldn't feel bad, or I wouldn't desire, excuse me, I wouldn't feel any desire for tobacco. I didn't, but I was extremely irritable for about 10 days. I mean, I was really, really, really irritable. Good not to be around, a good person not to be around. However, I quit smoking weed about, I got March 1st, this is 2004, as well. And never really wanted that again either. It just like had no place in my life anymore, and Kundalini took over. And if I do, I wouldn't even want to do it now, even though I've thought about it. I thought, well, it's going to be the same old thing because I know what the trip is like. I know what it's like, no matter how strong it is. So there's just points. But if anyone, that's one way of quitting those, set a day and uh, and pray to the goddess to help you overcome those addictions. And you might be surprised. Right now, so I hurt my back a while back. I'm using opioids for pain. Um, so now I'm worried about getting addicted to that, but I don't think, I just have this feeling it's not going to be a problem, a struggle. I mean, I certainly hope it isn't. Um, for the same reason that I'm using them for a reason, not for fun. Although kind of the lines kind of blur. Sometimes I take one when I'm not really in a lot of pain, just because they calm me down. Um, and so the problem comes up then, I'm taking that morphine for that. Um, Ativan is the other benzodiazepine. It's a benzodiazepine, which is also extremely addictive, as are all benzos. So it would be better to take a benzodiazepine. Well, they're maybe even more addictive than morphine. So anyway, it becomes a really, flip a coin, and you've got to just. So I keep asking the goddess to not let me be addicted to these things and not to need them either, ever. Anyhow, I just wanted to share that with whoever wrote that. Oh, and my advice to, I think it's Carissa who did the laser thing. See an ophthalmologist immediately. I'll just, because, your eyes are you only got two of them. Please do that. Anyhow, good luck with that. Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom. And David was holding up three. We've got three eyes, but not to make light of Chris's situation. Um, Thank you, Tom, for sharing about your experiences with addiction. So Gabor Mate's, I don't think it's just his idea. I mean, it's a universal idea, but it's one that he's presented really well, is that addiction has its roots in trauma, right? When a person is traumatized, they feel bad. They want to get the bad feeling to go away, so they turn to a vice, right? Pretty straightforward. Now, we know that Kundalini is a healing force, right? It heals us of something that we may refer to as trauma in a loose sense, but you can say it's karma, it's conditioning that we are clearing with the Kundalini process. So naturally, right, if you're healing this so-called trauma, well, then addiction can also fall away simultaneously. And this is what people report, right? Suddenly they're not interested in junk food. They're not interested in these like high dopaminergic foods, or they just suddenly stop alcohol, or they just have significant shifts in their relationship with these things because at the core they've been healed, or some things have been resolved. It doesn't happen for everybody, and it doesn't mean that we can't get re-addicted to something again. I'm not saying that. It's not like this black and white thing. It's very nuanced, but this may be one way of looking at why people suddenly drop certain urges. Their life completely changes. They turn towards more healthier habits, right? The root gets addressed. Let's hear from Samia.
A good evening, family. Again, I wanted to reach out to young lady who was talking about addictions, because I remember when I was first going through also my awakening. I was getting off of prescription meds, like some psych meds, and vaping and everything else. Um, this awakening pushed me to do that, because those particular things were not doing my body any well. It was making everything worse. So, I mean, that's the only reason why I had to lay off, and it took a little bit of work, especially getting off the vape thing, because that was a comfort thing, but it kept energetically was not conducive. Um, but also did help a little bit, and then it got to a point where my body is so sensitive to energy, and clairvoyant and everything else that it just certain I can't take anything, and it just my diet changed, my life changed slowly. So for me, it was a gradual thing, but after a while, and after getting off all those meds and stopped smoking and everything else, it felt calmer, it felt better, it felt right. But it was a journey as well. So possibly on your journey later on, that will happen as well. Um, just don't be so hard on yourself, because the shame as well, because I felt that shame from I shouldn't be, vaping, and this is terrible, and I shouldn't be on these meds, but the shame as well. I had to really work on and do some shadow work on the shame. Absolutely. But the journey will make you, give up that type of stuff. For me, it did. And that's all I had to share about it. But just please don't be so hard on yourself about it. So I wanted to tell her. And I told her in the chat too.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Samia. Yeah. Yeah. The spiritual guru, Nisargadatta Maharaj, he attained self-realization and continued to be addicted to smoking cigarettes. There's a human there still, right? There's still a human there. Vijay shares in the chat, this time last year, I kept a daily diary during the time I had acupuncture sessions. Acupressure, self-therapy led to the process speeding up into a third-person factor experience. Eventually, bodily pain was there all in sight, but it's the shadow parts and not very pleasant to see all at once. Yeah. Sounds like the treatments were very direct, took you very deep. Interesting stuff, Vijay. Thank you for sharing. So let's see here. Kelsey the Jackal shares here, I personally have used pain to understand what is wrong with the body. While Kundalini is healing and purging in my system, I would really feel the pain and dive deep to understand why. And most times to heal the pain, it would require total lifestyle changes. I kind of view it as a way of Kundalini showing you how to change for the better in areas it can't do itself without your own initiative and action. Yes, this is a fantastic perspective. Yeah. Coaxes us into a new lifestyle. Pain can kind of steer us, in a sense, in this way. Galen shares here, I'm currently in a Kundalini brain mush state and knew I wasn't sharing tonight. But since we've begun, I've been experiencing tons of body chills and keep crying, listening to and reading about everyone's experiences. I've lived through so much pain in all forms. I'm sending everyone so much love. Well, thank you, Galen, for being here with us, for feeling with us. Thank you. Okay, let's go over here to David.
Thank you, Brett. I just thought it's worthwhile sharing when we're talking about what we put into our bodies. I knocked myself up about drinking some alcohol and having the wrong junk food, and knew it wasn't the right thing. And I kept communicating to Source, Shakti, Mother, Holy Spirit, God, whatever you want to put a name to it. It's not that relevant, I don't think. And I kept asking this telepathic communication all day long. The next night I had a lucid dream of, sorry, a lucid dream whereby I had a silver can of Scotch and Coke in my right hand. All of a sudden, it was covered with black dirt. And I realized, this is a battle between light and dark. And cut a long story short, there's no mistakes that's happening, is there? Sorry. I tipped it out, and I haven't touched any alcohol since. With the food, there was a black, large horse to the left of me, and it had a long tail. And two of the long hairs out of the horse's tail were in the food. And I'm lifting this black horse hair, 3 feet long, out of the food I was eating. And I think, yuck. And it completely changed my perspective on what I was eating and what I was drinking. So I've gone off junk food and I'm not touching alcohol. So that was my higher self, again, through communication to source, showing me. Just thought it's worthwhile sharing.
Yeah. Well, thank you, David. Thank you. Yeah. Sometimes we get this direct messages very loud and very clear. Yeah. Sherwin shares here, sharing how we were talking about, suddenly dropping some of these vices. Sherwin shares, that's what happened to me. A cold turkey quit alcohol, cigs, weed, and benzos after 20 years of daily addiction. My body just didn't have urges anymore, and I would get sick just thinking about drinking. So crazy. Yeah, this is, miraculous, you could say. Thank you for sharing, Sherwin. It's been another really powerful call. Thank you all so much for sharing today, relating, holding space for one another, offering support, chatting in the chat, chatting in the chat. To all those that have offered a donation, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your engagement. I've got my course available on my website, Grounded Spiritual Emergence and Integration. If you're looking for some tools, some ideas, some practices, some teachings for finding energetic balance in your body, finding safety in your body, getting back in the world so that you can give your gifts, can learn more. BrentSpirit.com. I've got some slots open for one-to-one meetings if you're interested. You can stay tuned. We'll meet again next week. It's actually going to be a special After Dark meeting. We're going to have a co-host, special guest host, Aaron Camp. Aaron is incredible. I did an interview with them on my YouTube channel. You can check it out on the podcast. They'll be hosting with me and sharing some insights. So you can stay tuned for that. Hopefully, we'll see you next Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all so much for joining. Really appreciate you all. Much love, everyone.